The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, Children's Health Defense, wherever you are. It is my great pleasure to be with you today and to bring on two friends who've been very active with Children's Health Defense in Vermont. I had the pleasure a couple months ago of being with them and meeting with legislators and meeting with people in Vermont and from the New England area. So it's a special pleasure to bring on Dr. Vicki Dubin-Master and Lucy Burdo Hutchison today to talk about chiropractic, acupuncture, and NAET, three different methodologies for healing ourselves and our children. So welcome, ladies.
Good morning. So good to be here.
Great to see you.
Good morning. Yes, thank you for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So I want to first introduce you, Vicki, tell people a little bit about your background, and then ask you a few questions about your chiropractic work. So I know that you've been active in chiropractic for 36 years, especially caring for pregnant moms, kids, and athletes, and people who are both sick and well. You wrote a wonderful book in 2020, The Miracle Within, that empowers people about how their bodies can heal naturally. And you are a leader for Children's Health Defense, Vermont, New England, and also for Weston A. Price. You're a chapter leader. So tell us a little bit about your work in chiropractic with children and families and how to stay healthy. And I think, as you say, many people kind of have this misconception that chiropractic is about back pain. So tell us what you do.
Okay, well, first of all, chiropractic has been around since 1895. That was well before medicine was brought onto the picture. And our profession has always believed and promoted that we have this amazing innate ability to heal naturally, and we were created perfectly by our creator. And basically, it's our nervous system that holds that spark of life. So from the time the sperm and the egg come together and create that first, cells that start becoming the fetus, there's the spark of life that was given to us, and that runs through the nervous system. So the brain and the spinal cord are the central nervous system, and they are in the spine, which is the bony, the entire spinal. Let me just show you quickly. I have a model today. This is the spine. I just wanted you guys to see. This is plastic, and that spine is really the first thing that's created because it's protecting the most important part of our body, the brain and the spinal cord, in utero. And then the way that brain and spinal cord communicates to all the cells in the body is through the spinal nerves. And those spinal nerves come between each vertebrae, and the disc holds them apart. And those spinal nerves branch into smaller and smaller branches until they literally give life to every cell. So from the time we're born, even the birthing process itself, and even being in the mother, developing as a fetus, there's a lot of stress on the spine. And that's called when the spine gets out of alignment and puts pressure on these delicate nerves. So basically, when the spine is, it's a movable part of the body, and it has to be movable, or we would be solid pieces of, things that can't move. So we need a movable spine. But anyway, the spine moves, right? And it can put pressure on the delicate nerves. From the time we're born, those nerves have to try to continue to flow properly, so all those cells get that energy to heal through the nerves. And lots of things happen from the birthing process to just child development, like holding your head up, maybe falling out of the crib, or backpacks as you get older, falling off of, your bike or whatever. And then as we get older, postural problems, athletic problems, car accidents, falls. So we're constantly having trauma to our spine, and that's affecting our ability to heal and function properly. But it's not just the trauma. There's also chemical stress and emotional stress that affects the nervous system. So you put those three things together, and now we have EMF stress as well. That's just creating a lot of havoc in the nervous system. So by getting chiropractic early on, the earlier the better, even for helping moms and dads become more fertile, because the nerves go to the pelvis and the sexual organs. A human can become much more healthy, and it's completely natural. It's extremely safe, and it just makes perfect sense. So, and it's very gentle. So
Because
again,
what do you actually do, right? So explain
yeah,
to people, do you touch people? Do you
yeah.
use machines? What do you actually do to support this nervous system?
So first we do a very in-depth examination and consultation. And then we explain what we found. And if we find that there's subluxation or nerve stress because the spine's out of alignment, blocking nerve, then we know that that could be a problem to your health. So we call that subluxation, and then we do adjustments to the spine after we recommend a course of treatment to the patient. And these adjustments are very gentle and very specific, and you just never know like how much healthier you can be once you start getting adjusted. And again, we've been here since 1895. We've stood the test of time, and we're still the largest holistic health profession in America, and one of the first. So it's just comes to show that this is a really effective way for people to be healthy. And of course, pain relief is the tip of the iceberg, and it works, but that's just part of the healing that happens, because all the organs, glands, blood vessels, muscles, and joints also get improvement, because when the nerve flow's flowing better, the body works better. And that's our body's innate intelligence that's flowing through the nervous system and allowing us to have a better quality of life, a healthier life, and better functions overall. Improving emotional stress as well, because it helps regulate the autonomic nervous system. The
So,
adjustments, yeah.
sorry, so you mentioned that you can help people with fertility, and you mentioned that it could be useful for babies. Tell us a little bit more about what you would do with a pregnant mom, or what you would do with a newborn.
Okay. So there's a technique called the Webster technique, and I recommend, if you are pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant, that you would go on the ICPA website. It's icpa4kids.com, and find a Webster certified chiropractor, because they've been trained in that. And what that is a very gentle technique that's applied to the pregnant mom to release any tension in the pelvis that could be restricting the ability for that pelvis to expand as the baby is growing inside. If the mother had any injuries or trauma, or just has a very sedentary lifestyle, that could affect the ability for the baby to get into the proper position to develop easily and fully without any restriction. And then the mother will also have a much happier and healthier pregnancy, because we've found that moms that get adjusted, pregnant moms that get adjusted through their pregnancy, have faster deliveries, have more comfortable pregnancies, and then have better recovery once the baby's born, and more healthy births. And then not just that, but the baby also, it's like a 2-for-1. The baby also has a much better start of life, because the baby was in a position where it was able to get birth more comfortably, and then usually if the mom is being cared for through her pregnancy, she'll understand that the baby needs to get checked, because birth can be a very traumatic situation for a baby. And that first adjustment is so gentle. It's almost barely, the baby can barely feel it. It's just like a little bit of pressure that the chiropractic must know what they're doing, though. So again, make sure you go to an ICPA, or there are other pediatric organizations that will help you find a good chiropractor that is very well versed in pediatrics and pregnancies. But the main thing is that getting that baby checked at birth is the best thing you can do. And then as the baby's growing, continue getting the baby and the child checked throughout their growth periods.
And Vicki, what about kids on the autism spectrum? Do you use chiropractic with them? Can that be helpful as an intervention?
Absolutely. Actually, there is a theory that it's not just the vaccines and the toxic exposures that can cause problems with the neurological system of babies, but actually pressure on the base of the spinal cord due to a birth that might not have been ideal could affect the neurological function of the baby and the child development. So again, like getting that baby checked right at birth or as soon after birth as possible, and then continue with, and if there is a misalignment in the spine, reducing that that misalignment through a chiropractic adjustment, so so the nerves can flow freely and that baby can get full nerve flow to all the organs, glands, blood vessels, brain, and systems, so it can have excellent developmental opportunities through growth. And yes, autism, it's really powerful, and there are specialists. Depending on how severe the autism is, you might want to send your child to a specialist because they are really well versed in that. But I'm not a specialist, but I've seen autistic children and I've seen what great results happen. They just become more able to adapt to their environment. They're happier, they're more well adjusted, they're able to be more social and also do better with their school. So it's really, and family, yeah, it's so much better for everyone, yeah.
Vicki, thank you so much. So I want to welcome now Lucy Burdo Hutchison. Lucy is a licensed acupuncturist based in Brattleboro, Vermont, and she's been in private practice for over 2 decades. She has extensive training and is passionate about her specialty, NAET, Nambudrapad's allergy elimination technique. So Lucy, welcome. And tell us, what is NAET, and how does it work?
Thank you, Mary. It's so good to be here. I'm so excited to share NAET with a larger audience. So NAET stands for Nambudrapad's allergy elimination technique, and it was founded by Dr. Devi Nambudrapad in 1983 when she was going to acupuncture school, chiropractic school at the same time. She integrated those two by accident and came up with this allergy elimination system. So basically, it's a type of energy medicine, and it desensitizes the patient to one allergen at a time. So it's non-invasive. It's based on the principles of Oriental medicine, chiropractic, nutrition, and homeopathy. Treatments basically desensitize or reprogram or reboot the brain so the allergen is no longer seen as a threat. And when you do that, you clear the blockages in the acupuncture channels, and symptoms which are caused by blockages in channels disappear and are eliminated.
So how do allergies or sensitivities cause different illnesses, and how does NAET change that?
Okay, so basically an allergy or sensitivity, there's true allergies, which are IgE mediated anaphylactic allergies, and those are a separate ballgame. So while we do and can treat those, I just want to be clear that if you have IgE allergies, you're looking at a much longer protocol, a different amount of treatments. Intolerances or sensitivities respond much more quickly. And basically, when the brain identifies a substance, let's just say wheat, as a threat and creates antibodies to it, the nervous system shuts down the flow of energy through the electrical acupuncture meridians. And from that, depending on which meridian or channel is shut down, you get different symptoms. For example, one child might eat wheat and get diarrhea, another might get ADHD, another might get asthma, another might get hives. So when we reprogram or retrain the brain, those blockages in the electrical acupuncture circuits are cleared, and the blockage which caused the symptoms is gone. So then you get your diarrhea or ADHD or autism symptoms reduced or lessened.
So how do you assess the allergies or sensitivities? Probably people know about some, like maybe ragweed, but I'll bet that sometimes the family or the parents of the child may not know what the sensitivity is, or that there is an allergy. How do you assess that, Lucy?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. The first one is Dr. Nimbudrapad recommends, and I always want my patients to get blood work. So go to your doctor, go to your naturopath, go to your allergist, and get blood work, because we want to see if there's IgE or anaphylactic allergies. We want to make sure we're being safe. And a lot of people don't know they have IgE or anaphylactic allergies. Like 25% of kids who have anaphylactic reactions, nobody knew they even had anaphylactic allergies. So we want to get blood work for those, make sure we're safe. We don't want to treat something right out of the gate that is life-threatening, potentially life-threatening reaction. We also love to get IgG blood work, because that will show us the sensitivities. Then in the office, we use our second method of diagnosis, which is applied kinesiology or muscle testing, which chiropractors use too. There's a lot of overlay in what Dr. Vicki and I do. So with muscle testing, if there's a weakness in the channels caused by an allergen, somebody's arm, we're seeing it right here. Oh, anyway, the arm will go weak when you press on it. And when we do NAET treatments, which is, she's doing that right there, you stimulate the spinal points while the patient is holding a homeopathic sample or an actual sample of the item we're treating. The pressure on the nerves reprograms the brain. And then when we test after, while the person is holding the vial again, the arm is strong. If it's not, we do the spine again. So that's a way of showing that the brain now identifies this item as friendly. Actually, and then people can not only not react to it, which causes symptoms, but they can start absorbing their micronutrients.
Interesting. So how might this technology be helpful to children or adults who've been vaccine injured?
Such a good question. So there's a very specific protocol with NAET, and I'm just going to show you, this is the basics. This is like the first kit. And we only need to do the first 15 or 17, but these are little homeopathic vials. And for example, one of the basics is sugar mix. And somebody does the basics so they can absorb their micronutrients. So vitamin B, sugar, minerals, salt, vitamin C. Once they're not reacting to these micronutrients and the associated food groups, then they can absorb those nutrients. The immune system gets stronger. The nervous system gets nourished by vitamin B. Sugar is needed to escort vitamin B to be absorbed by minerals, which are so essential for so many vital functions. So the body gets stronger, the nervous system gets stronger, the immune system gets stronger. Then after those basics, we've got a really good foundation. And then we will treat for whatever shot, whatever vaccine caused the problems. There's over 100 ingredients in vaccines. There's all sorts of stuff. So it could be polysorbate 80, it could be thimerosal, it could be anything in that vaccine, or it could be the whole thing together that caused the brain to go, oh my gosh, this is a danger, and we're going to shut down the flow of energy in the body. So the person holds the vial, do their spinal points. The brain says, oh, I don't have to shut down the flow of energy. And you avoid whatever you're treating for 25 hours. And then we've seen the symptoms caused by the vaccine injury disappear, reduce. It's really exciting. Those 25 hours, as the treatment's running through the system, as the blockages are being released, you can run into symptoms. So, for example, when I treated a little boy for, I think it was MMR, there was like 2 hours. It was during that liver gallbladder time in Oriental medicine. So it was liver. It was like 1 to 3 a.m. And his dad said he just screamed for 2 hours straight.
Wow.
And my sense of that is not only were we releasing a blockage in the liver, but this little kid was telling us, you assaulted my body. You assaulted my soul by putting these poisons in me. So he had this huge emotional release. And then this kid was severely anaphylactic to everything, but then he was more present. His hyperactivity calmed down.
Wow.
So, and the other thing is you can pre-treat. So if somebody, I've had families come to me who had to get a shot in order to stay in a particular school. So we do the basics. I have vials for all the different vaccines. I treat them for that. Then they get the shot because they want to, need to, have to. It's their decision.
Right.
They save the immediate, whatever touched the shot immediately, the shot site. So whether it's a cotton ball or a Band-Aid, I say, just give that a little press and save that. That is gold, because on that, we have a minuscule sample of what went into the arm. And what went into the body is what we want to treat, because as we know, different batches have different ingredients.
Right.
So then we've got that exact thing. So they come to me if there's symptoms. Treat it.
Right. So how does somebody find an NAET practitioner, Lucy?
Either from somebody, your friend or family who's having great success, because you want to go to somebody who's getting results, as with anything, and or go to NAET.com, and I think it's locate a practitioner.
Right.
Practitioner locator, and then you put in your zip code and see who you and look how many courses they've done. Talk to them. One good way to know a good practitioner is if you go and you say, can I just treat for MMR, or can I just treat for my cat that my son wants to keep? And they say yes. They're not quite where we want them to be. I'm an instructor, so I'm really passionate about this. I want it done right. I want it done well, because I want people to get well. That's what matters. So the key to knowing is you've got to do the basics. And if somebody says you've got to do the basics, then they know what they're doing. They're going to say, no, we have to put a good foundation in. So we can get results that will hold.
And so how long typically would someone continue to see an NAET practitioner? Is it something that you do periodically for life, or is it something that's more acute?
Such a good question. So once you do the basics, which there was 15, now it's 17, they are done. You do not have to go back and redo them. Sometimes somebody might be okay with, let's just say with cheese. Let's say they couldn't eat cheese. We do NAET, now they can eat cheese, and all of a sudden they can't eat cheese. Again, there's just usually one thing off. Either there's some huge allergen that just got introduced to their life that we have to treat, and then cheese will be okay. Or the body is saying, I want to make cheese even better so I can absorb the nutrients better. Let's go back and treat it with digestive factors so I can digest it better. But unlike acupuncture, which I love as well, this is based in Oriental medicine, we're not treating the symptoms, we're treating the causes of the symptoms. So when you get something passing and get it passing well, the body's good. These treatments hold.
That's great. So, how does someone decide? Let's say we have a 3-year-old child who has a diagnosis of autism. The child regressed after an MMR at 18 months. How does that mom and dad, or mom or dad, decide where to go? Let's say they've tried a casein-free, gluten-free diet,
Yeah.
but they don't know what else to do. They don't know where to turn. What would you advise them, both Vicky and Lucy? Lucy, why don't you start?
Okay, I would say go on NAET.com, look on practitioner locator, see who's near you. Um, Ask around in your community. Is anybody seeing an NAET practitioner? Are they getting results? Because we want you to get results. You could probably go on a Facebook forum as well and just say, anybody know anybody in my area who's getting good results? Then go to the practitioner. Hopefully, they're going to tell you to get blood work. Do the best you can with that. Asthma and eczema are going to be a sign of there could be anaphylactic allergies. If there's no asthma, no eczema, we're probably dealing with more IgG, which is a way better scenario. So we'd love to get blood work, but if there's asthma or eczema, we have to. Then we're going to just go through the basics: BBF, egg mix, calcium mix, vitamin C mix, vitamin B mix, sugar mix. By 6 or 7 treatments, we want to see something's happening. We want to see there's a reduction in symptoms, an elimination in symptoms. We want to see, typically mom knows my child's getting better. Sometimes it's after the first treatment, which is brain body balance, which was created for autistic children. It just goes through all the channels and does a big clearing. So we want to notice that things are reducing, getting better. And by the time we get through the 15, 17 basics, and some of those could be a couple treatments. Oftentimes vitamin B is big for autistic children.
Yeah.
Maybe they are significantly better. Maybe, they're somewhat better, but then we will basically go to vaccines, chemicals, pesticides, just treat whatever the body asks for or whatever mom knows. I mean, in this case, we'd treat MMR and then treat MMR maybe with organs because it's a toxin, or treat some components of MMR. And then, hopefully the whole way we've been seeing a reduction and elimination of symptoms. And when you treat these things, sometimes the symptoms just disappear and you get your kid back,
Right. No, that's wonderful. What about you, Vicky? Where would you advise a mom or dad start in that scenario of a 3-year-old who's got a diagnosis of autism?
Well, I would say you can actually go in your own community because it's not easy to find. It's hard to work with a chiropractor that's, in another state. And you're going to want to go initially, more often, most likely. Although you will see results almost immediately, like a change in your child. And then I would highly recommend going on the ICPA for kids.com.
What is ICPA? What is ICPA?
International, yeah, it's the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association.
Okay.
And they really specialize in training chiropractors to work with pregnant moms and babies and children. And you can become a certified ICPA doc or just be on their website because you've been certified in Webster technique and have learned a lot through their classes because they give excellent education to chiropractors. And there's many docs that teach that. And then, you want to meet the chiropractor and then, just see how they are with children. And again, ask around your community if they know of any docs that work good with children, any chiropractors. And then, of course, just diet, just like you said, make sure your child is not eating processed foods, not eating, chemicals, sugar, gluten, and, dairy. But then I think between the NAET and the chiropractic, that would be a really good combination because this way we're approaching it from the allergen side as well as the physical. But chiropractic is so much more than just physical because it's the way that the body really works. And then the body can start to heal from within by releasing that tension or the stress that goes to the nerves, especially the brain and the spinal cord, which is where a lot of the problem is with these kids that are struggling with neurotoxins.
Thank you, Vicki. So I just want to thank you both, Vicki and Lucy, for a real education for me on pediatric chiropractic and NAET. And I know that all of this information will be really valuable to our viewers. So thank you again for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Good morning, everyone. We are going to go to Dawn in a second. I just thought I'd jump on now. I'm going to bring on Michael Caine in a second, just to clear up a few things. So yesterday, you heard federal action and religious exemption with Michael Caine, Jagdaba Gibson, and Kim Mack-Rosenberg. Today, you're going to hear from Dawn Richardson and Barbara Lowe Fisher on how we ultimately remove vaccine mandates. Now, I just want to say this before I bring Michael Caine on. There's been a bit of confusion over this, which we're going to bring on Michael and clear up in a second. But I wanted to make a few things really clear to our viewers. First of all, Children's Health Defence is not in a fight with anyone. We're all about unity, okay? Now, we may have difference of opinions with other organisations, but that's the beauty of life, right? And this is why we set up CHD TV. So you might get one show saying one thing, for example, the Rogam we had, and then someone else will say absolutely not. The whole point of CHD TV is that you can all make your own minds up. This is your informed consent. You do not get anywhere else, certainly in the mainstream media. So, Michael Caine, welcome, and thank you for coming on last minute to talk about this, because I think we do need to clear this up, don't we?
Yeah, thanks so much, Polly. I think you set that up perfectly. For those who don't know, where this controversy in our movement started is that there's many groups who are proposing executive action to bring the religious exemption to vaccination back to the states that are denied it and to guarantee it in all 50 states. A number of prominent groups support that. Children's Health Defense, ICANN, Physicians for Informed Consent, Teachers for Choice, Autism Action Network, about 40 groups. A lot of groups support it, but not everyone in our movement supports it. There's a lot of people that are saying, no, we need to focus on states' rights actions and not do any federal actions because those actions could endanger things. This could be the wrong strategy. Now, I don't agree with that. I think Children's Health Defense is on the right side of this. But these are prominent groups that have been doing this for a long time, that have informed opinions, and they have an opinion to express and to debate. And our audience has the right to hear that and to think that through. So that's what you're about to hear. You're about to hear Dawn and Barbara discuss the other side. They are against federal action that Children's Health Defense and others are putting forward as the next step in this battle for religious liberty that so many have been denied throughout this country. So what a better way to do this, and what a better way to go forward than to, we're not shutting down debate. We're not shutting down the other side. There isn't another side. That's not what it is. We're all one movement trying to figure out in this very unique historical moment with Bobby Kennedy in the White House, what's next? What's the next move? How do we make this work for as many people as possible for religious and medical freedom? So we welcome all sides to this. I think this is a good space. And Polly, I think this is what you always wanted CHD TV to be from the beginning of your inception of it and thinking this out.
Absolutely. And it's super important that we ourselves are the people that make the decisions for our bodies and our children and our families. But I just want to also say to the viewers, look, if you're seeing stuff on social media or wherever it is you're reading, and it's saying, oh, Children's Health Defense are doing this, they're really bad, they're controlled opposition, whatever it is that they say about us, contact us. And we will address it on a show. Michael Caine will address it, or I will, or Mary will, or Kim Mack-Rosenberg. But we will tell you the truth. But often there's a lot of misinformation spread about Children's Health Defense out there, which is, you know, the way the world is. But I just want everyone to know, please contact us if you're worried about anything. We do not work for Bobby Kennedy anymore. Remember that as well. A lot of people writing to us saying, can you pass this on to Bobby? Actually, we can. He is now government, obviously, and we are just a 501c3 carrying on doing the best that we can. Yes, he formed it, but he's not my boss anymore.
Yeah, so, and I think that's a really good point. If you see things that are allegedly said by CHD or someone here, bring it up to us. We want to address this head on. This is, hey, there's the email. Thanks, Lou. That's where you reach out to us. We get emails from people all the time forwarded to us. So please do that and reach out, and know that the people that are on like various sides of this are talking, right? There's behind the scenes talks. Everybody's trying to figure out what the proper way forward is. And from my opinion, the proper way forward is dialogue, debate, and doing so cordially and respectfully, because we're talking about some really important groups in our movement on both sides of this. And we need to have respect for all these opinions, and then we'll make our own minds up for ourselves.
Yeah, so that's exactly what's about to happen. So to everyone, just to remind you, we love NVIC, we love Dawn Richardson, and we love Barbara Fisher. So please know that. And we're now going to take you to Dawn's segment. Enjoy it. And I'm sure Michael will address it next week, whatever's going on next week. Michael, thank you for coming on and explaining it so wonderfully.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Polly.
Hello, my name is Dawn Richardson, and welcome to Advocacy Lifeline on CHD TV. Thank you so much for joining us today. The whole purpose of this show is to empower you, our viewers, to be able to affect change in law, policy, and public opinion through education and action for issues that are important to you and your family. These are trying times right now. They have been for a while. And there are a lot of things that, because of social media and because of the internet, we have access to so much information. We are going to be presenting some important information here for you today, but I have to preface this by saying that the information being prefaced today and being presented is not necessarily the view of the National Vaccine Information Center, where I work full-time as the Director of Advocacy, or for Children's Health Defense, who is our wonderful sponsor for today's show. And also, this is not to be construed as legal or medical advice, because it's not. These are simply our opinions, and we are going to be sharing them with you today. I have been in the vaccine choice and informed consent movement for the last 30 years. I've always been opposed to vaccine mandates. I had 2 serious life-threatening vaccine reactions when I was young, so my husband and I did not want to take that risk with our own children. The state we live in, Texas, was very restrictive with their medical and religious exemptions back when I was pregnant and looking into the vaccine issue. I was very fortunate that when my children were young, I found medical doctors that qualified my children for medical exemptions because of my past history with vaccine reactions. However, I knew that not all families concerned for the safety of their children had the same option. I worked alongside my good friend Rebecca Rex in the legislature for 7 years in a very hostile political environment towards freedom of choice and informed consent. And over those years, we gained ground. We won the hearts and minds of many legislators, and we were able to secure a philosophical or conscientious vaccine exemption for children in Texas, but also we expanded the restrictive religious exemption, which before had only been available to families who belonged to a recognized or organized church that in their tenets and practices were opposed to vaccines. But also we expanded the medical exemption as well. In the past, the medical exemption was only allowed to a doctor to write if he would certify that the vaccine would cause a vaccine reaction, a certainty that almost no doctor could say with confidence, but it was such a restrictive environment. It was very hard to get those exemptions. Well, this took a lot of hard work to get these laws passed and changed. And sacrifice. I would drag my kids down. I would pack their food. We'd be down there for the day. When my second daughter was born, she was in a stroller. She spent a lot of time down there. We did this for 7 years straight. We knew that the only way to have secure and durable protections for our children was to change the hearts and minds of the legislature and to change state law. I want to make one thing clear. The problem in Texas was not the absence of inclusive vaccine exemptions. The problem was, and continues to be, and this is for all states, not just Texas, is that there are vaccine mandates. Securing and protecting vaccine exemptions to existing vaccine mandates was absolutely necessary, but putting an end to vaccine mandates continues to be the goal. When new vaccine mandates came about, we fought them over the years, every single one of them, from chickenpox vaccines for young children to college meningitis vaccine mandates to a gubernatorial executive order for HPV vaccines for 7th grade girls, all the way to COVID vaccine mandates for so many. We didn't win them all, but we fought them all because it was the right thing to do. Mandates presumed vaccination for all was the best policy, but nothing could be further from the truth. One size does not fit all. Vaccine injuries and deaths are too real for some people, as we all have differences in our health, environment, and immune systems, so nobody is guaranteed to be unharmed by vaccination. Vaccination should always be with informed consent without any sanctions if you say no. It should never be mandated. We pushed to ban vaccine passports in Texas, where people over their COVID-19 vaccination status were being denied access to public accommodations, healthcare, higher education, employment, housing, nursing homes, concerts, and so much more. All the grassroots came out to give testimony and work towards this goal, where we succeeded. And in 2020, knowing adult vaccine mandates for COVID could be coming, I worked in my capacity as the Director of Advocacy for NVIC to finish a draft piece of model legislation that I had been working on for decades at this point to prohibit all vaccine mandates and discrimination. Parts of this were passed in that first session in 24 states initially for COVID mandates. This was back in like 2021 timeframe. And in 2021, sponsored by Texas Senator Bob Hall, we were able to get a bill filed, Senate Bill 1669, to prohibit all vaccine mandates and vaccine status discrimination in Texas. While this bill didn't pass, it educated many legislators and led to acceptance of and passage of some other more targeted bills adding protections later. I remember so clearly being outraged as I sat on my couch in September of 2021, being lectured by President Biden in his national address, where he said his patience was wearing thin on those like my family who refused to take a COVID vaccine, where he laid out his plan for many unprecedented federal vaccine mandates, including for federal workers and contractors, which that affected my husband. And then the military, private companies with more than 100 workers, which also my husband's company fell under. And then also any of the employees in hospitals receiving Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements. We were all, those of us who declined the vaccine and continued to stay firm in our belief that we were not going to take it, no matter what the cost, we were discriminated against. We were gaslit. We were marginalized. And unfortunately, many had no choice but to take the vaccine against their will, or they would lose their income and not be able to pay for housing or food for their families. It was such an awful time. Now the victims from the COVID vaccine push mandates, discrimination, and force all have been piling up, and they continue to do so. My independent, healthy dad had 2 strokes after his Pfizer COVID shots and is now fully dependent on care 24 hours, 7 a day, 7 days a week. Thank you, Biden, Fauci, and Pfizer, for absolutely nothing. I am sharing all this to say that it is hard to resist this all. It takes hard work and perseverance over time to make these changes at the state level, and they don't happen overnight. And as many other states have also seen success, I can definitively say the effort is worth it. During those early years, I was tutored and taken under the wing of Barbara Lowe Fisher, president and co-founder of NVIC. She inspired me to stay the course and not give up and always stand for what was right. We face a new challenge today as 4 states in the past 10 years have successfully removed their religious exemption or their philosophical exemptions to vaccine mandates for children. Families in California, New York, Connecticut, and Maine are affected. Many more states have had bills attempting to do the same, but fortunately those bills were killed. Like this session in Hawaii, thousands of people came up and protested against the religious exemption removal bill in Hawaii. They gave their testimonies and that bill was pulled down. Lawmakers in Massachusetts right now on this day are currently weighing 2 bills where one would remove the religious exemption entirely and the other would so severely restrict medical and religious exemptions that they would be out of reach for many, many more children. On the NVIC advocacy portal, nvicadvocacy.org, we have an action alert where you can help in Massachusetts to stop these bills. I am so excited to have on as a guest today my mentor, Barbara Lowe Fisher, president and co-founder of the 43-year-old National Vaccine Information Center, to talk with us today about how we protect vaccine exemptions and ultimately remove vaccine mandates. Welcome, Barbara, and thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Dawn. Yes, it's our nation is involved in so many contentious issues right now. And the one that we're facing in terms of these restrictions on the right to take a religious exemption to vaccination in 4 of the states, even though we have that freedom in 46, is really causing a lot of disagreement about the strategy, about how to return the religious exemption to those states. I think what's getting lost is the issue of vaccine mandates. A lot of talk about exemptions, but you don't need an exemption if you don't have a mandate. And NVIC, our 43-year mission has been to prevent vaccine injuries and deaths through public education. We eventually added on to that and to defend the right to informed consent to vaccination. In other words, giving consent to a medical procedure that carries the risk of injury or death, in this case, a pharmaceutical product, is about having the information and giving your consent. It's not about asking somebody else, like the government or a doctor or a hospital or anyone, for the permission to take an exemption to a vaccine law. And there are proposals out there right now to ask President Trump to issue an executive order that would force the states of California, New York, Maine, and Connecticut, where the legislatures have voted to remove the religious exemption, to force those states to return the religious exemption. That is a de facto, basically, support of vaccine mandates.
Let me ask you a question, Barbara, because back in the day when you had kids, I've heard your story over and over again, and I would like you to give the folks out there a background, your personal background, how you got into this, because we have so many new people, so many young parents out there that might not have heard your story before. But having an exemption doesn't guarantee that you're even going to know about it or be able to use it because of restrictions placed on it. Can you please share with folks how you got into this issue and just a little bit about NVIC before we dive into this stuff a little further?
Well, I was a young mom, first-time mom, my baby born in 78, Chris. And by 1980, I wanted him to go into a Mother's Day Out program, a socialization program. And I was told that he couldn't, it was actually a church-based program. And I was told that he could not go to this program with other toddlers unless he got a 4th DPT and 4th oral polio vaccination. So it was my desire to get him in there so he could be with other kids that basically took me to the doctor, where he got his 4th DPT and oral polio vaccinations. And I watched him within hours have what I didn't recognize was a severe vaccine reaction, a convulsion, a collapse shock, and a state of unconsciousness, where he basically had a brain inflammation and involving encephalopathy that I interrupted. Thank the Lord I interrupted it. And otherwise, I think he would have died, or he would have been severely brain injured. He was left with multiple learning disabilities, attention deficit so severe he had to stay in a self-contained classroom for the learning disabled, a special ed classroom throughout his 12 years of public education. He was a very bright child, and it's when that happens to you, you don't forget it. And it was that requirement to go into this for the program, the requirement that he had to get vaccinated. I didn't know. I was in Virginia. I did not know that Virginia had a religious exemption to vaccination.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. And actually, it's quite a good exemption. It doesn't require you to belong to a church opposing vaccination, or that has a tenant opposing vaccination. It allows you to have personal religious beliefs. So I could very easily have signed that. But you see, at the time, nobody knew anything about vaccine reactions. Parents had not been told anything that vaccines could injure and kill a child. So I was operating in a vacuum of knowledge. That's not true today. There's much more public awareness about the fact that vaccines carry risks. So we're in a situation right now where I totally understand. I completely understand the pain of the parents in those 4 states where the religious exemption has been removed. But what we have to remember is that the founders of our country created a decentralized form of government here, a government where individual rights and minority rights are respected, where it's not a pure democracy. The majority does not always rule. And one of the things they did to make sure there was not a tyranny of the majority, a federal government that could become tyrannical, is that they created state governments, as well as local and city governments as well. But state governments are a check and balance on federal power in the 10th Amendment. That's where that's articulated in the 10th Amendment. What is not defined as a federal power in the U.S. Constitution is reserved for the states. Public health lawmaking is by and large reserved for the states. Vaccine lawmaking, vaccine laws are state laws, and there are 50 different types of laws in 50 states and different exemptions. Now, this is where the disagreement is on strategy. There are those who want to get the federal government involved, the White House, federal legislation, and the U.S. Attorney General, to go in and force those states, those state legislatures, to give the religious exemption back. Now, we all want to have the right to obey our conscience and the right to have religious beliefs and be able to make voluntary decisions about vaccination. But the fix is not a federal fix. You can look at the history of vaccination in this country in law. You look at the 1905 Supreme Court decision, Jacobson versus Massachusetts, the seminal Supreme Court decision that for the past 120 years has been upheld over and over again in the courts and by the Supreme Court. And that decision in Jacobson was basically that the state can, that the right of the state to protect public health trumps personal beliefs or religious beliefs about vaccination. It was a utilitarian decision based on the greater good, which is, utilitarianism is a pseudo-ethic, which basically is a guide to public lawmaking. And it's used in terms of, it's a mathematical equation, the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. And so basically what it did was it codified into law utilitarianism as the anchor for vaccine policymaking. And it devalued the individual. And it said, hey, state can do it. And, you know, we're not at a point in this society where we can overturn 120 years of case law on public health lawmaking. We don't have a Supreme Court that is going to go, it's a big gamble to try to drive a lawsuit to the Supreme Court to challenge Jacobson versus Massachusetts. This Supreme Court is on the record recently as supporting the Biden COVID vaccine mandate. There are justices still on the court that voted in Brucewitz versus Wyeth to completely indemnify vaccine manufacturers for product design defect, that is, failure to make a safer vaccine. They went in. I mean, you're not likely to get a positive outcome in this current Supreme Court on the issue of whether or not the state it can be forced to give a religious exemption to vaccination. So our position is leave it alone. Leave the federal government out of what is a constitutional authority of the states to make vaccine law, and do it the way you've been doing it, Dawn. The way I remember working with you on the back in the 90s and I remember saying conscientious belief, try for conscientious belief. Why? Because a person may not belong to a church. A person may not have a deeply held religious belief about vaccination, but their conscience is telling them that they shouldn't do it. We should have the human right or the natural right to obey our conscience, the judgment of our conscience. And so the conscientious belief I see as the religious belief as being part of the conscientious belief, which should be in every state if we're not going to, I mean, if we're not, our goal is no vaccine mandates. No one, no hospital, no doctor, no school, no one should force you to take a pharmaceutical product that can injure or kill you or your child without your voluntary informed consent, period. No begging for exemptions. No saying, oh, you know, I have sincerely held religious beliefs, but I don't belong to church. Please, please give me the religious exemption. No, it's unjust. It's dangerous to have the state forcing people to engage in risk-taking when it comes to the well-being of their bodies, the bodies of their children. This is about protection of bodily integrity, protection of the first human right, which is the right to autonomy. And certainly, in the past 120 years, we have learned so much more about the risks associated with vaccines. And so our position is keep the federal government out of state vaccine policymaking. Any power that you give to the federal government, you will never get back.
You know, Barbara, as I'm thinking about this, you know, I remember how upset people were, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody by bringing this up, but I'm just using this for illustrative purposes. But I remember how upset people were when the Supreme Court vacated Roe v. Wade. I talked to a lot of young adults, young women who were terrified. They were scared that they would not be able to make their own reproductive decisions should they become pregnant and all that. And they blamed the court. And what they didn't understand is they didn't understand the ruling. They were subjected to all of the media misrepresenting this issue. What the Supreme Court, the reason why they overturned the decision is because in the Constitution, there is no mention of this. So the lawmaking authority, it defers to the states unless Congress passes a federal law. Congress failed to act over all these years on making any decision. And the states were individually left to make their own laws regarding abortion. And the Supreme Court wasn't ruling on whether or not they morally believed abortion was just or unjust. They were simply following the Constitution. And in the absence of any federal law, the law is deferred, the lawmaking is deferred to the states. It's the same thing here. We don't want to set a precedent here where the federal government is in control over these decisions. Dictators come and go. The checks and balances that were so brilliant that our founding fathers put in, where the states would counterbalance the rights, so that people could have their rights and they could make their own decisions through electing their own legislators. That's important. And I know you said it's concerning and it's scary if the states, don't allow for this and try and force. But what's even scarier is moving towards a system where this would fall under federal rule.
Oh,
And
Oh,
just
yeah.
as outraged and as angry as I was when I was sitting on that couch watching Biden address the nation, scrunching up his face and whispering and getting up and talking down to me and my family and threatening our existence, I remember that feeling. And I'm concerned about backlash. These 4 states, absolutely, their government abhors the current administration. The backlash on trying to shove this down their throats is going to be something that could take a very, very long time to recover from, if ever.
And Dawn, let's remember, executive orders can come and go. President Trump can put in an executive order, but when the next president is elected, that president can repeal the executive order. This is not a permanent fix to go and try and change state law with an executive order. It's also really not very constitutional.
Well, here's the thing that, and I can see this argument too, that, people that are proposing an executive order, doing it under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, it would be not like what Biden did, where he did an executive order to his agencies to create a mandate. It was a different mechanism. There is a federal law, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which exists, that he could potentially use an executive order under that. But the problem with that is that, just like I said, with what happened with Roe v. Wade, this would be challenged. And if you can't make an argument for a religious reason to either uphold or terminate a pregnancy, how are you going to do it on vaccination? I don't see how this wouldn't get overturned. So can you outline for us what the risks could be if this question under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, if an executive order came out, what the risks would be if this goes to the Supreme Court, especially given their history?
Anybody who thinks they can challenge Jacobson versus Massachusetts, which is, as I said, the seminal ruling at the Supreme Court level, affirming the right of the states legislatures to make vaccine laws that require citizens to get vaccinated, whether they have religious, personal, whatever their belief is about vaccination, the right of the state to protect the public health trumps that. That's what they said. I don't agree with Jacobson. It's a horrible decision, but it is the decision that anchors public health law and this idea of some can be sacrificed for the rest. That's really utilitarianism, is that for the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people, you can do all kinds of things. You can say all kinds of things are moral. And certainly, the other thing is, an attorney from Georgetown Law has assigned on to this effort to go into those, have the federal government go into those 4 states. This is a real warning red flag for me, because when I saw that, all I could think of was Professor Lawrence Gonston at Georgetown Law, who was the architect of the Model State Emergency Health Powers Act that the CDC had commissioned Georgetown, and it was in cooperation with Johns Hopkins University, to write this model state health legislation, which would rewrite the public health laws of all the states to give health officials more power, like a lot of power, to do a lot of things, including arresting and forcibly vaccinating and quarantining and forcibly medicating citizens in the time of emergency. They went state by state. The CDC and Gostin and all of these people who were in favor of giving the health officials more power whenever the Secretary of HHS declared a public emergency went state by state. Why did they have to go state by state? Because vaccine laws are state laws.
They would
They
have
couldn't get
loved
it-
to go, they would have loved to just
Oh.
written something at the federal level and be done with
Absolutely.
it. But they knew they couldn't because they knew they would be challenged and they would lose because of that precedent.
We're
So-
not gonna, it's not time yet. Someday, with more education, with having the majority of people questioning or not supporting the use of vaccines as the heart and soul of public health policymaking. I mean, vaccines are, I mean, let's face it, vaccines are at the center of almost all public health policymaking. It's good. Vaccines are going to save the world from disease, don't you know? And so,
I don't think so.
Until that's changed, until the perception changed, which includes on the Supreme Court, you're not going to get a favorable ruling overturning Jacobson.
We
I
hope
don't
that
care.
we can get there someday, but we are not there yet.
No,
And the precedent is just, if you look at after 9/11, how they went state to state for these model health laws, and if you look at what happened with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, looking at this as a state issue, I really don't believe that this Supreme Court could be counted on to preserve an executive order under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, because you have this intersection. It's not just about the First Amendment. You can't read the Constitution and stop at the First Amendment. You have to keep going and read up to the 10th Amendment. There's this intersection, and case law has been very clear where those two intersect. The states have the powers. But what that also means is the states have the powers to pass laws that prohibit vaccine mandates. It is up to the state to preserve public health. It doesn't have to be the interpretation. The way to protect public health is with vaccine mandates. It's up to the states.
And federal
It's right.
interference,
And
giving
federal
the
interference.
government more power. We don't want that. This is a huge gamble with everyone's right to make voluntary decisions about vaccination, to try a lawsuit to the Supreme Court to challenge Jacobson.
So, Barbara, to wrap things up here, because we're running out of time, I just want you to tell people, what would you like people to do? What's your call to action asking what people should be doing? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we always say no forced vaccination, not in America. And we need to keep our eye on that ball. We really do. And what we need to do right now, go to nvic.org, and you'll see on the left-hand side under trending news, click on the religion, the call that we're making, and contact your state and federal representatives and senators and ask them to please read our letter to the Religious Liberty Commission and our addendum that lays out why we believe there should be no federal interference in state vaccine lawmaking, so that we educate people. This is a difference of opinion and strategy, but NVIC believes that the position that we have taken is a responsible one.
And one thing we can certainly all agree on is that we should not have vaccine mandates. And even though the paths to get there are being visioned differently, I am so grateful to see how many people and organizations that have come about over the years have taken this issue on and are fighting in their state legislatures. They was fighting in their state legislatures to pass good laws. It is so different from when you started, Barbara, being the only ones there on Capitol Hill, and then when I was in Texas, and nobody had reversed the laws before like we did in Texas. And then now there are so many wonderful young families, organizations, and it's confusing. There's a lot of information. And
we don't have a COVID vaccine mandate. We don't have a COVID vaccine mandate for kids to go to school, even though the CDC has put it on the recommended list because of states' rights. That was what protected this country from becoming like Australia and other countries where everybody had to get that shot.
We fought every single one of those mandates, and we tried to advance bills prohibiting the mandates, and it made a difference. And I'm grateful for all the young people that have come on board and are taking this on, and that we all can at least agree that mandates are wrong and that we need to make sure that our future children, grandchildren, and so on don't live under the laws and constraints that we have now. We can change. I remember legislative director for a state senator, the first year I started talking to legislators in 1995 or 1996, he said to me, "The legislature giveth and the legislature can taketh away." And so laws are laws, but they're like silly putty. You can form them into the society that you want to live in and to protect that. So know that you do have that power. I want to thank you so much, Barbara, for coming on today. And again, you can go to nvic.org and see her commentary and the letters and the addendum and all the information. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. We really appreciate you. And we're trying to educate, have these good, meaningful discussions, and continue to get all of you out there talking to your state legislators to make a difference in your own states. You can help by making a donation to Children's Health Defense so they can continue to bring you this very independent thinking that's not supported by mainstream media for information, and as well to please send a donation to the National Vaccine Information Center so we can continue to do this work in the states and continue to educate yourself and lawmakers and medical professionals about the issues surrounding vaccines and informed consent. You can share this link for this show today off of the Children's Health Defense website for CHD TV. You can pick Advocacy Lifeline as it shows and click on the link. If you're wanting to have somebody watch it today, it'll be under today's show on the main page of CHD TV. So we will see you in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks on Wednesday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock Central Time, and 7 o'clock Pacific Time. Then we fall on the half an hour of the show. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you soon. Take care. God bless y'all. God bless America. And please stay tuned. We're going to share a people's story following this episode, and stay and watch. You need to see what's been going on with these HPV vaccines. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
I'm Peggy, and this is my daughter, Kelsey.
And just before we do the Gardasil, can I just say thank you for the Periscope peeps, this rug that you're sitting on, this beautiful blanket. You organised it. You were part of it.
Part of Team Polly.
Well, thank you. I like that in my
Yes.
Team Polly peeps.
Yay, Team Polly.
Thank you for that. All right, so let's go back. And what age did you have the Gardasil, the first Gardasil?
15.
And before that, what was your mindset with vaccines?
She's fully vaccinated, never had a problem, but was perfectly healthy, had no issues whatsoever at all until we got the Gardasil.
So when you would meet someone who would say, vaccines are bad, don't do them, when you were...
I never heard of any such thing. It was just, nobody ever talked about it. Nobody.
And you didn't think to question
No.
men in the white coats?
Just the way we were taught. So.
All right, so what made you go for the Gardasil? Did you get a call? Did you get a letter? Were you sick?
It was in 2010. I took her to the doctor. It had to have been for some reason, otherwise we wouldn't have been there. And the doctor brought it up. I hadn't even heard of Gardasil at the time. And I was like, well, at that time we had really started eating very clean, organic, working out all the time. And I just thought, I wasn't sure. And I asked the doctor, who I completely trusted. We've been going to her for years. And she said, it's perfectly safe. The only side effect will be a little soreness in the arm, and that'll be about it. And my gut told me no, but I did it anyways. So she got the shot, and after the first shot, she slept for a couple days. She was extremely fatigued, and
before the Gardasil, was she a sleepy kind of girl?
no.
Active? What did you used to do?
Yeah, I was really active. I started going to the gym with her probably at age like 13.
4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Played volleyball.
So sleeping for a couple of days was out of character.
Completely.
Okay.
And then she started complaining about her heart with the palpitations. It was just, I'm going to have a heart attack. I feel like my heart's jumping out of my chest. Me not even relating it to the vaccine at all. I mean, didn't even put the two together. Headaches. And so that was in June of 2010. And then in December of 2010, I think you're supposed to go back 3 months after the first shot. And I was like, I really hadn't done much research, but all her friends' moms were saying, how could you not have her do it? Do you want her to get cervical cancer? And I was just like, oh my gosh. So we went back for the next shot, and I told the doctor again that I really wasn't convinced that this was the right thing to do. And she said, well, because her great-grandmother had ovarian cancer, she really needs the Gardasil shot to protect her. And of course, well, that's all I had to hear. And so she got that second shot and slept for the next 2 years.
2 years?
2 years of chronic fatigue, headaches, and then her arms started tingling and would go numb. And I realized then, oh, this is it. This is the reason. It's the Gardasil. So I never took her back for the third shot, because I think if I had, and they asked me to bring her back for the third one, and I refused. So that was 6 years ago.
Can you go back and describe what you actually mean by slept for 2 years?
I would come home from school and just sleep. I wouldn't want to go to school because I was so tired in the morning. I would go over to friends' houses to hang out, and I'd be sleeping there. I would just always be sleeping.
Wherever she
Always.
went, she'd sleep, no matter where we were. We'd get in the car to go to the store, she'd fall asleep. I mean, it was just non-stop sleeping. So.
And what did the doctor say when you said, look, my kid's sleeping the whole time?
I don't think we went back.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I never went back.
And did you get any help? How did you get out of this 2 year sleep?
I don't really.
She just pushed through. I'm telling you, she was just such a trooper. She just pushed through, and she didn't stop with the exercising. She didn't stop with the healthy eating, and then the scoliosis started. And there's been days she'll come home, and she'll just be in so much pain, right even now. And you know, I just wish someone would reach in my back and rip out my spine. I cannot take this anymore. So we're getting help for that right now through our local chiropractor.
So now it's interesting to me because we're hearing a lot of stories, not just with Gardasil, with vaccines and scoliosis. And I know we've got Marcella Piper-Terry, and if you don't know who that is, you need to look her up.
Oh,
She's
yes.
coming on the bus very shortly, and we're going to talk a lot more about that.
Good.
Because it's not a coincidence that we're hearing of this scoliosis.
Yeah, she has given me, Marcella's given me a really good protocol for detox. So I'm looking into that just to help, anything to help this pain. Because nothing helped. I mean, we've never been real big on aspirin, Tylenol, Advil ever. So, and she doesn't like to take anything for the pain. So she just pushes, honestly, she just pushes
Toughs it
through.
out.
Yeah.
So was there any other symptoms other than just the sleep and the pain?
The headaches,
Yeah, I've never had headaches till then.
and the
Ever.
arms going numb, and to now this arm where she got the
Suffering.
shot, it's still, she's having problems with.
You're still having symptoms even now?
Yeah, I'm a hairstylist, so I use my arms all day, and I go numb while I'm working.
It's terrible.
But she wanted that dream. She wanted to be a hairstylist, makeup artist. And so she pushed through school and graduated with honors. But
So, I mean, I asked all the Gardasil girls to do this. You were, just summarize this up, you know, you were pro-vaccine, you would never question a doctor, you have the Gardasil, you become extremely ill. What is your advice now to the people that were you?
I tell everyone, do not do the Gardasil. If anything, if you're going to do others, that's up to you. I can't tell you what to do. I advise you against them, but Gardasil, absolutely, positively not. It's useless. It's just solely for profit. It's a crime what they're doing to these girls and these boys.
And babies.
And the baby, well, yeah, but I mean with the Gardasil.
Well, they're trying to put Gardasil on
That's
babies.
true, yes, I've been reading that too.
It's criminal.
But I didn't know anything, and then until Vaxxed came out, and the Tribeca thing caught my eye as I was scrolling. It popped up on my Facebook feed that it was pulled from Tribeca. So I thought, what is this? So I scrolled and I read the story, and I was like, So then I went to your page. And then I start seeing Hannah, and I see Savannah and Caitlin, and I'm just like, Skylee, oh my gosh. And I'm reading all the things that have happened to them, and I'm thinking, I keep telling her, this is you, this is you. I mean, this is what happened to you. So, yeah, I would suggest no one get this. No one. It's not worth it. It's not, it hasn't been proven safe. Well, there's no vaccines that are safe. I am so anti-vaccine now. Period. For all of them.
Well, what's happened is we were pro-vaccine. I don't think they can label us anti-vaccine. I don't even know what that really means when we vaccinate our children. It makes sense. But what we've lost trust. They've hurt our babies.
Absolutely.
No one messes with our babies, so we're done.
We don't go back to any conventional doctors anymore. Do integrative medicine. Everything's natural.
And so describe your health today, as I know you're much better than you were, but as opposed to how you were before you had the vaccine. You were going to the gym with your mum and stuff.
I have more energy now. My left arm, as she said, still goes numb. I get headaches from time to time, but it's been almost 7 years now, so I think it's slowly starting to detox out of my body.
Good. And I wish I'd known that you were a hairstylist. Look at the state of my hair on the road. I'm like a homeless person. I look horrific. Yeah, come on. All right, listen, loads of love to you. Everybody loving you big time.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate you telling our story, because every Gardasil, I mean, every stop now, we've got at least 2 Gardasil stories.
Well, after your Brittany story in San Diego yesterday, I was like, this doesn't even compare.
But it's still not okay for the Gardasil
still not
to
that.
you. And you should all get in some Gardasil group, all you mums together, because you've all got post-traumatic stress disorder big time. That's horrible what you've been through.
It's very sad.
I'm glad you made it through. All right, so anything else you would like to say to the people?
Just to you guys, thank you so much. I would have never known. Millions would have never known, ever.
Oh, we're going to get this sorted. All right, guys, Periscope, thank you. We are Vaxxed, thank you. And we'll come back on again with another story.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.